Okay, so we've done a couple of things here. We've got the leather off of it and done a little bit of sanding. One thing I would like to remind you about this particular flute kit especially is that the important part of the flute kit is the thing that's going to make this guy play properly for you is that this area right here where the tracks are is going to have to be very, very flat. It needs to be such that there is no air leak coming off of this guy. And likewise, you know, if you do some sanding, you do sanding like this, or if you do it one of my methods by cupping it around and sanding like this, that's great and fine, no problem. But when you come up here to this area, and if you could zoom in on that, that way we can see what we're talking about here. I'm going to grab my trusty pointing knife. If you notice, I think you can probably see it. There's a nice little piece of flat section right here on the side of this track. The inside's usually pretty flat as long as you haven't sawed in it with a sandpaper. You know, you don't want to do this kind of number. And then over here, you can see that I've got it sanded a little bit, and there's a tiny little flat section right here. So it should make a lot of contact with the block, and I'll show you on this block here, just a flat one like what comes with your kit. You know, you need to be able to see that the tracks end and the sound holes begin at that same location. That really helps it to play. If something were to happen that, let's say you were making your own drone kit and it wasn't one that you purchased from us, you're just building one yourself, you want to be certain that the back of this sound hole and the back of that sound hole are relative. You know, a 32nd of an inch, an eighth of an inch is really okay, but they need to be relatively close in order to keep this side and that side of these flutes in tune. If you make this hole down here and this hole where it's at, you would wind up having a little bit lower tone on one chamber than the other chamber. No big deal. And if you notice too, while we're talking about it on the subject here, this is my block that we provide with your drone flute kit. This is what I prefer my drone flute blocks to look like, and I'll show you why. You know, you can do this. That's some of it's cosmetic, some of it is just my experience making flutes. You can do things any which way you want. There's another procedure that I usually do on this flute block that I'll do in a moment when we're tuning the flute. It has nothing to do with tuning, by the way, but it makes it so that the leather ties on it really nice. So we'll look at that in just a second. So for right now, we'll go ahead and use this block since it's going to be my end product block. And let's see, seems like my little bird friends are coming out soon. If you notice, the back side of the drone does not have any holes in here. As I mentioned, if you wanted to, before gluing it together, you could sand that area out, or you could gouge it out. You could use a knife. You could use a number of different techniques to get a hole in there. But I'm going to show you the way that I prefer to do it for a number of reasons. Just basically my my drill here, which I'm going to have to plug in. Let's see for just a second, so if we can keep this going right. I'm going to hit it at something of an angle. Now you've got to think in your mind that there is an air chamber in here, and that it's about this thick up here, and that as a flute player, I personally like to have my drone flutes such that the mouthpieces are close together. That way I don't have to open my mouth really big to play the flute. So I keep my two mouthpieces here, the two air entrances for our air chamber. I like to keep them relatively close together, but not so close that I can't stop playing the drone side and play just the flute side. Once again, example in just a second. And I like to drill this at an angle, so if you can keep an eye here what we're doing. Okay. We went through. You want to test your theory and make sure that you drilled just the one side out. Even trying to play right now. How about that? Now we'll drill the other side. Let's see. Yep. Okay, so now you've got two, bump any kind of debris out of there again. Now you've got two mouthpieces. If you're blowing through both holes, and you can cover up each of these and let it come out of one and then let it come out of the other, typically that means that you're doing okay. And you can come look too and see if you cover this up. Is it dark in there? Yes. Cover this up, is dark in there. So anyway, that's pretty much all of that part that we're going to need to do right now. If something were to happen that you had sanded this and you sanded too much of the edge off of this side over here, in order to get this flat again, I would recommend taking your block, folding it inside of the sandpaper as such, and then coming back and forth and sanding it like this. That will ensure that you have a nice, I don't know if you can see it or not on the video once again, but I just, earlier when I said this was a little bit thin, I actually corrected that. It looks a lot better now. And we can test it to see if it's going to work, and then we'll go to the tuning process and getting all that properly. The tuning process we're going to do here is going to make this thing traditionally tuned, which is great. We can check it on the tuner as well to see how it's going. And the more important part of getting a drone to play properly, whether you tune it to a key or not a key or what have you, is making certain that the bottom notes, and if it's one of my drones, the top note, by blowing fast on this side, you want to make sure that they all match up to where they belong. So as long as the flute sounds good and then the notes match up, you've got a viable flute. Let's try it though. Well, that's really close to in tune there. I'm anxious to see what key that's in. And then this other side, this one's a little lower. This one's about 15 cents higher, which is just minor. It may make a wobble when we play it, but I'll show you how to fix it. There's a little wobble. Just a tiny wobble, and if you notice, I actually corrected it with my mouth. So if you'll follow me over to the sander, we'll go ahead and get this guy tuned up and looking right. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is use my burning tool here, just a straight rod, and we're going to burn these holes out. Not something you have to do, just something that I really prefer to do. Of course, if you made the holes large enough to begin with, it's not really necessary. But for me, the whole reason that we burn our holes out here in the first place is because it makes the air release more smooth, and certainly is a better way. You can see there's glue all over my fingers. Is a better way to make your flutes, in my opinion. So we're going to do that, and be mindful that these holes are in here at an angle. If you see me blowing, it's kind of a habit I've gotten into. Keep that smoke out of your face. Heat up. So we've got one of them. He looks a little bit low in there, but it's not really a problem. I think it's going to be a great flute. Let's see here, and then let them heat up. We're going to burn this other one, and I'll show you what I like to do with my block, as well as how we tune the bottom of this guy. And then we'll check its key and do all that kind of mess too. But keep in mind, we do have specific videos on tuning flutes, and if you want to make this flute perfectly in the key of A432 or A444, otherwise known as 528C, whatever you want to do, you are going to want to tune this half of the flute here. So go ahead and tune it, have it exactly whatever key you want, and then worry about how it matches over to the other one. It is important to keep them, together until you get that point, to keep the intonations close. But not so necessary to check them until you have this side completely tuned. Here we go, burning this other. Just double check this one. Great looking flute here. I'm going to leave this heating up in case I need to tune some of the fingerings here, but well, that's sensitive, isn't it? since I've opened this up, it sounds like both chambers are playing the note properly and there's not so much of a wobble. I'll let it do that so you can hear what I'm talking about, a wobble. That's where the notes are not harmonious and not working together. The easy way to check that, to see which side needs to be corrected, and please follow me on this, it is kind of tricky to do it this way. It's easier with a tuner, but we'll do it with a tuner in a moment. Let me grab my tuner so we can kind of make reference to it here. So I'm going to set my tuner over here to the side. You listen. A little bit of wobble. What you do is find something flat. I like to use my sander because it's usually here. You can use your hand or a table or a leg or whatever. And you want to partially cover one of the sides. As I'm partially covering this side, it went in tune. It quit wobbling. So since it went in tune, that tells me that this side needs to be longer to be in tune with this side, or rather this side is too short. Now, having said that, once again, if you want to be very articulate and have this note tuned exactly to a specific key, you'll want to put it on the tuner instead, which we're going to look at before I start sanding, just so that you know how to do that. But if you're checking it and you cover this part of the flute here, even a piece of tape would work. But if you have covered this part of the flute and it sounds like it's going into tune rather than coming out of tune, then that means that we're going to need to sand this side over here a little bit more shallow. So it's going to end up with an angle on it like this. Sanding this side here more shallow will make it shorter, putting it in tune with this note over here, which is already too short. So, having said that, let's take a look at the tuner. I'll let you get situated here. We're going to take a look at the tuner. Now, what is the best way for you to see that? Put a piece of wood underneath of it here. See if maybe that'll help out some. Maybe a couple of pieces of wood. There we go. Lots of sawdust. Okay, there we are. I think it's probably clear enough. I know there's lots of sawdust on the screen. There we go. So let's see what key just the flute side. I'm not playing both sides right now, just the flute side is. It's about an A flat. That's a G sharp there, A flat. And I'm thinking to myself, well, I know that 432 is a little bit more flat than 440. Let's check it and see how it looks on the 432. So it is very close to 432 hertz A. If we wanted to make a 432 hertz flute, all we're going to need to do is sand down this side a little bit, the side that I'm playing, the flute side, I guess you could say, as opposed to the drone side, which is this other chamber with no holes in it. We're going to sand this side down, and if we sand this side down a little bit, we'll eventually get it to so this guy here plays at 432 hertz A, and then we can tune the other side to it. Then we can tune all the notes in this fingering here to 432 hertz A scale, and then you'll have a 432 hertz drone. Really good way to go. Oops, looks like my batteries are dying. Good enough anyway, because we're not going to use a tuner. We're going to do it by the manual way. So like I said, that's a way you can go. If you want to use a tuner, tune it up to scale, you know, A, C, D, E, G, A, and just tune the whole thing so that it's in tune with 432 hertz A. Or if you want to take it to 440, you're just going to have to cut off, probably, my guess, about a somewhere between 1/4 and 1/2 of an inch, probably like 3/8 of an inch off of this guy to put them into 440. Not all drone kits are going to turn out the same. Once again, if you have too much glue on this side, or if you sanded too much of this side down, it's going to make it just a little bit different. Your flute chamber may be a little bit more disharmonious with your drone chamber, depending, and it's not a problem. A good flute maker learns how to roll the punches and how to tune their flute individually, regardless of how it's designed, and make it your flute. Anyway, so what we're going to do right now, going back to the tuning by ear method, we're going to sand this side down so that it matches this side, so it doesn't do that anymore. Let's hear it. Of course, the question arises, can you do this by hand? Since most of you don't have a belt sander in place, I'm imagining, yes, absolutely you can do this by hand. Most of these kits are made so that you can do a number of adjustments without any major tools. If you need to cut any off, you can use a hacksaw. If you don't have a sander, I recommend, and I'll show you, let's see here, taking a piece of your sandpaper like this, hold it down flat on the table like I used to, and run in circles, just like this number right here, and eventually you'll get it sanded down the way you needed it. For me, belt sander, much quicker, and we'll just go about it that way. So let's see what it sounds like right now if it's all in tune. And let's check to make sure I didn't put it too far out of tune. The way we're going to check is we're going to cover that same side, the drone chamber, a little bit and see if it goes into tune. If it does, we need to go a little further. If it doesn't, it makes it worse, then we need to go back and sand that side down a little bit. See when it stops wobbling? That's when it's perfect. So we're going to go back in here. We're going to sand the flute side down a little shorter here. I sanded it a little bit. As you see, it's a little bit of an angle, but I need to go just a little further. Okay. Something else I recommend doing if you are using a belt sander or some kind of high power tool is to sand any of these burrs out of the inside. Those can also slow the airspeed down. Slowing airspeed down makes it go flat and blah 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 blah, just like that. Okay, that rhymed. Okay, let's see what it sounds like now. For some reason, it's not playing. I think I may have bumped something. There we go. Make sure that your block is lined up with the edge, the back edge of the flutes, of course. Very important stuff. Let's see if I can play just that side. That sounds really good. Now just my ear tells me that these two holes probably need to be a little bit larger. Just a smidgen flat. It may even be sawdust in there causing it. You don't have to get it perfectly articulate. Most important thing with a drone flute, the thing that impresses your listener when you're playing this flute, or that impresses your client if you're selling these kind of flutes, the thing that really impresses people is these two bottom notes being in tune like we just made them. That's like the most important thing. It's a rudimentary part of drone making. So let's hear it by itself. I could probably put it in my tuner and find out it is a perfect A flat, verging on a perfect 432 hertz A, but I'm not worried about it. This one's going to be tuned traditionally. So let's see. You can also tell if these fingerings are in tune by the tone that it produces when you play those three bottom fingerings with the drone chamber. Now, I'm going to try something a little different. I'm going to blow fast in the drone chamber just by itself. You can hear if you blow fast, it jumps octave to the next note. Typically, the next note is going to be a little sharp. That's part of the deal. When you blow fast through a flute, it makes it jump octave, but it also makes it go sharp. So, what I'm wanting to do is produce a note with the drone chamber on the bottom note so that they're in tune, which we've already done. Great. And then we also, or what I like to do, is produce a note so that when I blow fast on the drone chamber, that it matches this top hole. And you can hear it's a little wobble in there. Now I can correct that with my mouth by playing one side a little faster than the other side. But that's not what I want to do. I want to be able to center my mouth on the mouthpieces and play effortlessly and get this thing to happen the way it's supposed to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in. Of course, you can do this with your tuner, checking it. If it's necessary to put this hole just a smidgen sharp and this hole maybe just a little bit behind it to make them untune, you can. If that's not a concern of yours and you don't want to have it play 2 notes on the drum chamber, no problem. So what I'm going to do is just make this guy a little bit more sharp. I know from my own experience, this middle hole needs to be just a smidgen sharper to match. So you see me putting my finger near the hole. Likewise, in tuning a flute, if you cover this hole up a little bit, it'll make that hole go flat. If it goes flat and stops wobbling, then it needed to be a little flatter, in which case, other than filling the hole in a little tiny bit, the only other thing you can do is go in and fill in this hole a little bit. We have videos on how to troubleshoot tuning like that. Not really a big deal. That sounds really great. So I think we're pretty much done with it. I may go back and put it on the tuner if I need to send them out with an order. But that is your drone flute. As promised, a really quick little tip that we can do here. I like to do on my block. I like to sand a little cave in that guy right there. That makes the leather lace sit down inside of it just right so that it doesn't want to slide around. Just like we use on most of our flute blocks. Get a little bit of a dish in there. And that'll make it work out better. If you want to make this drone look like some of the drones that we have on our site, you can easily sand it down. Like that. There's a square version. And there's the more rounded version. This is what we usually make and sell on our site. And you know, all this can be achieved by hand just by painstakingly sanding for maybe 20 minutes, no big deal. We always finish our drones up with hand sandpaper anyway. Just mostly to get this all round and smooth so that it feels comfortable in your mouth. And you see how I'm sanding it, holding it against my leg or something, table or what have you. And then I'm kind of cupping this so that it makes it a little cave. And there you have it. Your really great drone flute. And you built yourself from one of our flute kits. Like I said, a really nice instrument. If you haven't seen any of our other videos, please make sure you check out a few. Oiling and waxing this drone will make it play like you would not believe. Change the tone of it 100%. And even though it sounds really good right now, just wait. That's it. So like I say, you can tie your leather on it after you've got it oiled and waxed, or if you're going to lacquer it, whatever you're going to do there. And your drone flute is now complete. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoy this little flute build. Once again, you know, we have these kits available on our website. If you don't have the extra dinero to get one, you can certainly build your own. It's not that difficult to make one of these instruments, and certainly is worth, believe me, the amount we're asking for them. It's like a drop in the bucket compared to what it takes to do this. But anyway, I hope you guys have enjoyed this, and certainly look forward to hearing from you soon. Thank you all for requesting that we put one of these out. I've been meaning to for a time now, and I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have any questions, feel free to shoot us a message through our website, bluebearflutes.com. Check us out on Facebook. We try to answer all those messages usually within 24 hours, and we look forward to hearing from you really soon. Thanks so much again. This is Charlie Mato-Toyela signing out for bluebearflutes.com.